Okay, good afternoon. Okay, I should start with good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever it is that you're listening to us from. It's such an honor to have you again at this February webinar of the Real Estate Today, brought to you by Bossy LA and Company. Um, it's good to see you all again, and it's good to have you all again join us. It promises to be a wonderful time. It promises to be a great time, 1 hour of very rich discussions and knowledge transfer. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. And for those who are joining us from other climes, we also want to welcome you because we now have audience from different parts of the world. And so without taking too much of time, this is Real Estate Today, brought to you by Obosele and Company. It's a monthly way of bringing to you topical issues in order to deepen our knowledge with regards to issues that has to do with real estate and everything real estate and real estate. So today, we're going to be discussing on the economics of green building in Nigeria. Before we go on, please, for as many who have joined us, we started. Can you just tell somebody to mention to somebody else, that we are live? And so they've not missed at all. So let them join immediately as soon as they can, because we're about to delve into it right now. Like I said earlier on, the topic for today is the economics of green building in Nigeria. Quickly, for as many who will be having one or two questions, please, we'll give you the privilege to ask your question. Howbeit, if you want to take your questions live, or you want to make one comment or the other, you want to speak with the guest speaker directly to make your comment from the back end, we're going to give you the opportunity to do so. So please take your pen and your paper and make your jottings. For as many also would not be willing to come directly to be promoted online, you can drop your questions at the chat box. We attend to all of those questions, and I'm certain that at the end of the day, it's going to be a wonderful time altogether. So today, there's a need for you to meet our guest. And our guest video is still, Doctor, can you please turn on your video so as I just read a few things about you so they can actually know. Okay, so today we'll be having the guest speaker is also not, she'd actually spoken to us once before, and I proudly call her an alumna of Obosele and Company, I'll get to that much more later. Our guest today is no other person than Dr. Tenigbade Yewande Odu. Dr. Tenigbade Yewande Odu. I'm just going to say a few things about her, just to read a few things about her before I get her to start to take over. Dr. Tenigbade Odu is an esteemed academic and researcher specializing in environmental sustainability within the built environment. She currently serves as a lecturer in the Department of Estate Management at Nile University of Nigeria's Faculty of Environmental Sciences. Her research focuses on advancing sustainability in real estate, with particular emphasis on green housing and eco-friendly construction practices. She has contributed significantly to academic literature, including co-authoring a study titled Home Users, Awareness of Green Housing in Cities, a study of Lagos metropolises, which examined the adoption of green housing solution amongst Lagos residents. Beyond academia, Dr. Odu is a registered surveyor and valuer, reinforcing our expertise in estate management and property valuation. She actively advocates for energy efficient and sustainable development practices, making her a leading voice in Nigeria green real estate movement. Her passion lies in bridging the gap between research and the real world application, ensuring that sustainability principles are not just theoretical, but actively implemented in modern urban development. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Tenigbade Yewande Odu. And I didn't put that earlier on. I mentioned it in passing, an alumni of Obosele and Company. Dr. Teni, you're welcome. It's over to you.
Thank you, Sojo. Thank you, Obosele and Co, for having me back here on this webinar series. to talk about, of course, what I am passionate about. I appreciate, as I always do, and as I did the last time I was here, I first need to appreciate my bosses, Mr. Chudi Ubosi and Mr. Emeka Ele, for not forgetting about me after I left to go into academics. I'm really happy to share knowledge here. So I don't know how many participants who are here today were at my last presentation. So it's almost like it's a, sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. Please let me know when you can see it.
Your screen is, we can see it now.
Okay, thank you. So this presentation is basically like it's almost a continuation of the first one. Like I said, I don't know how many participants that are here today were there before, but this I'll just brush over a few things so that for those who are not here, they understand the context in which we are speaking. So the topic, like has been rightly said and announced, is the economics of green buildings in Nigeria. And why do we need to consider the economic aspect? So for those that were at my first presentation, you know, what I did was introduce to the listeners what exactly are green buildings, what features do green buildings have, why do we need to have green buildings, okay? But it's also important that we look at the economic aspect of it, because at the end of the day, you know, one of the things that gives, as estate surveyors and valuers, we usually say that one of the things that gives value to property is demand, effective demand. Okay, effective demand means you don't just desire something, but you actually have the power, which is the financial capacity to purchase it. Okay, and um, if you are going to consider having the financial capacity to purchase something, it means that you need to understand the economics of that thing. So that's why we're going to be looking into the economics of green buildings today. But before we start, I would like us to take a quick quiz that will help us to understand the context. So please, if you have your phones, you can scan this barcode and quickly answer the question so that we understand where we're coming from. I hope you're still seeing the barcode.
Oh yes, doctor, it's there.
Okay,
I'm just
so
wondering what's about people who are using their phone to probably, you know.
okay, so let me see if I can get the link and put it in the chat box. I hope I hope I don't scatter everything by doing that. Okay, I put a link in the chat box. I hope you can see it. Please let me know if you can see the link in the chat
Yes,
box.
yes, I can see it now. I can see it. It's there in the chat box.
Okay. So I'm waiting for the responses. So far I can see just 4. I'm waiting for more responses. Um, can you see the responses? I've projected the responses. Can you see that too?
Yes, I can see. Yeah, the responses are there.
Okay. So I'm waiting for more responses. There are just 5 so far. Can we get more responses? Can we get up to 10 at least?
So please, you can click on, for those who are, you can just click and just answer the questions. I mean, directly, the answers will go to her, I'm sure. So please, as many who have not done that, please just do that immediately so that we can just, yes, just go to the chat box, click on the link, then you see it and just pick the answer that you consider suitable for you.
Okay, I don't know what the problem is. I can see just 5 responses. Is it that people are not are unable to connect? I think we'll just go ahead. Okay, so let's use the 5 that we have here. So the question says, which of the following would be your reason for choosing an electric car over a conventional fuel-powered car? And of the 5 responses we have here, 3 people have said, I will be saving the environment from degradation. And that's actually it's very interesting. That's why I wanted more results. It's very interesting that has the most answers. And then one person has said, I will be saving money since I do not need to buy fuel. And one person has said, it is trendy. I honestly would have expected that that more people would choose option 2. I will be saving money since I do not need to buy fuel. I really would have loved to know what the problem is and why people could not respond to this quiz. It would have been nice to know, to have people's opinions. Okay, so one more person has answered and said that they are indifferent. Um, somebody said they can't see the link. Let me post it again. Um, yes, I've just reposted it. So just click on it. Um, or alternatively, maybe you can answer in the chat box. So the question, like I said, is which of the following would be your reason for choosing an electric car over a conventional fuel-powered car? Option 1. So in the chat box, you can just put 1, 2, 3, or 4. So option 1 is I will be saving the environment from degradation. Option 2 is I will be saving money since I do not need to buy fuel. Option 3 is it is trendy. And option 4 is I am indifferent. So just pick 1, 2, 3, or 4 and let's know what you think. So I'm going to stop sharing
Doctor,
this now.
you have some responses on the chat box. I think people just put the options on the chat. I mean, I
Yes.
think yes, you can look at that, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So I'm in the chat box now. I'm seeing somebody has picked 1. I have 2. 2 people have picked option 2. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead. That's just to give us to put this presentation in context. So I'll go back to sharing my slides now. Please let me know what you can see.
Yeah, your slides are
Can you
showing what are green
okay,
buildings.
what are green buildings? All right. So that question, like I said, was just to like juggle our brains and then put this presentation in context. So we've said we're looking at the economics of green buildings in Nigeria. So what exactly are green buildings? And it's important that I know that a lot of people have heard um, about green buildings before, but it's important to make sure that people actually know what green buildings are. I think it was in my last presentation that I mentioned that, sometimes you assume that people know what things are and they don't. I had when I was doing a research, I had to interview some members of the Lagos State House of Assembly at the time, and the answers I got for green buildings, for what green buildings are, were some of them were very ridiculous. Someone actually said that it's a house that is painted green. You know, another misconception is that some people mistake green buildings for green houses, which are those like shades that people in agriculture use to grow some plants, maybe that they're trying to protect from excessive sunlight or something. So they're like transparent houses that are built for plants. So sometimes when you say green buildings, some people actually mistake green buildings for greenhouses, but they are not the same. So what is a green building? A green building is a building designed, constructed, and operated to minimize its negative environmental impacts and promote resource efficiency throughout its cycle. Okay. We can also say that a green building is a building constructed to reduce carbon footprints. A green building is a building constructed to reduce the carbon footprints, conserve natural resources, and create healthier living and working environments for the occupants. So let me break that down. Now, we live in when we talk about the environment, we look at the environment in two lights. Okay, it's either we say the natural environment or the built environment. So basically, the natural environment has to do with the environment as created by God. So everything that comes in nature, your hills, your trees, your seeds, animals, your microorganisms, insects, whatever was created naturally is the natural environment. The built environment, however, is the environment as enhanced by man. So the built environment is the natural environment plus everything that man put on it. So buildings, infrastructure, your roads, your markets, your playgrounds, all those things that were put in the natural environment by man makes it the built environment. So in constructing or in building up that built environment, what happens is that the natural environment becomes degraded in one way or the other. It's either through the exploration of the natural environments to find resources for the new environment. Somehow you are degrading the natural environment. It could be through the transportation of those things, even to the site where you want to use them, or even the construction of buildings, or even living in the buildings, which we call operation of buildings. All those things have their negative effect on the environment, because a lot of times, it's either you are destroying something, you are digging the ground, you are cutting down trees, you are displacing animals that were naturally living in that place, or you are using a machine that is emitting smoke into the atmosphere. A lot of times this smoke contains carbon, and it means that the quality of the atmosphere becomes reduced as the more we develop, the more the worse the quality of the environment becomes. So when we talk about green buildings, we are looking at, okay, the truth of the matter is the only total solution to this problem is that development stops completely. Okay, people stop building, and that is totally impossible. Okay, the global population is 8 billion and counting. There's no sign that that population is going to stop growing anytime soon. And the more people are coming, the more there's need for accommodation in one way or the other, either for living or for working or for use. So development must continue. So green buildings are the techniques that we are looking to say, okay, we will continue to build, but how do we build in a way that it has a minimal effect on the environment? That is the meaning of green buildings. Okay. So, and how do we do that? We look at, okay, what are the things that we do to put up a building? How does this process affect the environment? What can we do to make it better? So in terms of in terms of exploring resources, we are looking at what are the resources that we can explore that will not totally finish these resources. Like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, will there still be these resources for the children that we are leaving behind to use? Okay. Um, by the time we finish we finish emitting carbon into the atmosphere, in 20, 40, 50 years, will people be able to walk around? Will there still be people and animals that will be able to walk around and breathe? So how can we construct our buildings in such a way that they have minimal effect on the environment? So basically, that is the meaning of green buildings. Okay. And there are many ways to look at these things. But let's go ahead. As we go ahead, we'll be talking about it. So we say, what are the features, the key features of green buildings? Now, green buildings is a global phenomenon. Everywhere in the world you go to, people are talking about green buildings. There's a World Green Building Council, WGBC, okay, which oversees all the various national green building councils. So in Nigeria, for instance, we have the Green Building Council of Nigeria. In South Africa, they have the Green Building Council of South Africa. So different countries have green building councils. So it's a global phenomenon. So all over the world, they may have different techniques for achieving green buildings, especially because of different factors like weather, like culture and all that. But these are some of the basic green building features that you see wherever you go. So we have energy efficiency. Okay, energy efficiency simply means that you have built the property in such a way that its use for electricity is very reduced. Electricity or energy generally is very reduced. Water conservation. We have sustainable materials. So sustainable materials simply means that you are using materials that, first of all, as you are extracting them from the natural environment, they can be replaced. They can be replaced. So things like wood, you know that when you fell a tree, as long as you plant another tree, you have replaced that tree. In future, someone else can fell that tree and replace it. Okay, but there's some resources that cannot be replaced. Okay, so we're saying, how do we build in a way that as much as possible we are using resources that are sustainable? Then indoor air environmental quality or indoor air quality, that is buildings that do not have that are not detrimental to the health of the users. In a lot of buildings, you don't know, unconsciously, sometimes you don't know that they have negative effect on the users because of the kind of materials that have been used in their construction. Okay, and so that's why sometimes you hear things like sick building syndrome, that it's actually possible.
Doctor, we lost your
Because
audio
the way
there.
that,
Okay.
I hope you can still hear me.
Yes, good now, good now.
Okay. Hello,
We can
did
just
I
hear
go
you now.
offline?
Yes, you went offline. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Sorry. Let me. So, problem now is I don't know at what point I went offline.
We were talking about, I think, the indoor environment, indoor quality.
Oh, okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes, your slides are showing.
Okay. Yes. So waste reduction also means that the property has been built, or the building has been built in such a way that there's minimal waste. Waste in terms of water, for instance, waste in terms of electricity, for instance, and then also waste in terms of at at the final stage of the property during demolition. um has it been built in such a way that a lot of the materials that were used in the property can be reused? And that's when we talk about circularity. You might have heard a term of of called circular economy or circularity. So it means that at the end of the life of the building, are there materials that can be reused for other purposes, even if it's not for construction, but for other purposes in that building? Then we have site sustainability and rating certification. Now we're not going to so rating certification simply means, there are different, it's easy for me to say, to come out and say, I built a green building, maybe just because I put one feature there, So we have different bodies that actually come and assess buildings to certify that, okay, this building is actually a green building. Okay. And that is what we mean by rating certification. They will come, they will rate the building. In a lot of cases, what they're looking out for is energy efficiency, water efficiency, and then material embodied energy use. So for instance, here in Nigeria, like I said earlier, we have the Green Building Council of Nigeria that I am a member of, and we are currently working on having our first indigenous rating certification system. Okay. We're hoping that before the end of this year, we're going to have our own Nigerian rating certification system. But the most common one in Nigeria today will be the EDGE, which is owned by the IFC. That's the private sector arm of the World Bank. Okay. And what they do is they have green building experts and green building auditors that go to assess buildings to make sure that, okay, yes, all the features, that the minimum or maximum features expected of this building to be called a green building are actually existing, and then they'll give you a certification. Now, for this presentation, we're not going to focus on certification because, like we said, we're looking at the economics of green building. And to be honest, the certification actually is one factor that adds to the cost of green building, because certification is not you have to pay for the assessment, you have to pay the assessors and all that, right? So we will not be focusing on certification, rather be focusing on other things. So in the economic context, why should you choose a green building? Okay. And this was the reason why I started with that quiz, because I felt, okay, because of the current price of fuel and everything, cars will be more relatable. And that was why I said that the initial answers surprised me, that there are more people that are thinking about, I want to believe that the people that picked the option of saving the environment are the eco-centric people, because ordinarily I feel that the highest responses should be for saving money, because the truth of the matter is that I would think about myself before I think about the environment, right? So if there is something I can do that can help me to save money on fuel, to be honest, I will do it. If you now tell me later that, this thing you did, you're actually contributing to the quality of the environment, well, all well and good, but at least I have first contributed to the quality of my pockets. Do you understand? So that was why I put up that question to say, what would be your reason for using an electric car? Um, someone or two actually said that because it's trendy. Mhm. Okay, that's not a bad, it's not a bad reason to, but to be honest, you would think about your pocket first. Okay, it's trendy. Well, if it's trendy and it's expensive to maintain, it means that after the first two faults and you can't maintain it, you drop it now. Then what happens to the money you spent on it, right? But if it can help you to save at least 50% of what you are saving on of what you're spending on fuel monthly, I think that's a very good reason to consider an electric car. So in the economic context, why should we choose green buildings? So the first reason I put here is you are going to be saving costs through energy efficiency. Now, anybody that has been in Nigeria in the past 2 years or a year and a half will know that what you're spending on electricity has there's been a steady increase. And if you have been fortunate in quotes, enough to be placed on band A, um, I'm sure you are really enjoying paying electricity bills. Okay. So it's not been funny. I have been to this last weekend. I was in someone's house in Abuja, someone that stays in a high-end area in Abuja, in Guzape, very big house, very lovely house. And they were telling me that they have moved to their electricity to a solar system completely. That in fact they just put it on. They spent so much on solar that because they put them on band A, and when they were looking at their bills, they were like, there was no way they were going to continue doing that. That they'd rather spend that money on a solar system. So now they've moved to solar system. So um let's look at electricity. Sorry. Let's look at how do you save costs on electricity. So in Nigeria, all these data are gotten from reliable sources, by the way. They're either gotten from the National Bureau of Statistics or similar sources. So in Nigeria today, 58.2% of households are connected to the national grid. Okay. So, and we have solar energy in Nigeria that has a potential to supply between 30 to 50% of the country's need. So because of the climatic region that we find ourselves, we have a constant supply of sunlight almost all year round, right? Almost all year round, we have a constant supply of sunlight. So research has been done, and it has been seen that up to 50% of the country's needs can be covered by solar energy. However, the percentage of households. So we're focusing on households now. Of course, when we say household, we are talking more of residential properties. Of course, there are other forms of there are other types of properties. There's commercial, there's industrial, and all that. But let's focus on residential. So households that have access to solar electricity is just about 4.8% of households in Nigeria. This is a country that actually has the potential to supply 50% electricity, using solar, but only 4.8% of the households have access to solar electricity. And for the total energy need of the country, we see that solar energy only covers about 1%. 1%. So we have the potential to save costs, but for one reason or the other, we are not saving costs. Now, I got this from the Eco Electricity Distribution Company website, and these are their tariffs, current electricity tariffs. So I decided to focus on band A because, of course, they are the most interesting. They are the most interesting service band right now. Okay, and we can see that this is the rates per kilowatt hour for band A by the Eco Electricity Distribution Company, 209 naira 50 kobo. And they say they supply a minimum of 20 hours a day, even though a lot of band A users have said that is not true. But let's assume that is what they said they supply. Okay, now let's look at, so everything here, please, I need to put out this caveat now. Everything here is their estimates. Okay, everything here are estimates. They're not accurate, but they're just to, like I said, just to give us a perspective, put everything in perspective. We can do more accurate calculations later, but these are just estimates. So if the band A is spending 209 naira per kilowatt hour, and we have said that okay, research also shows that the average electricity use per day in a household, let's say like a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom house, is about 25 kilowatt hours. So if you multiply that by 30 days, it means that you'll be spending about 160,000 a month. A lot of people have told me that they spend more than that. Some people spend less, but like I said, all these are estimates. So if you do 160,000 a month, that will give us approximately 2 million a year on electricity. Now, note the fact that this amount does not include money that you will use to fuel a generator. Say okay, they take light and you want to use a generator, this 2 million does not include the amount that you use to fuel a generator to use. Okay. Now, the cost of installation of a 5 kVA solar system, and this cost includes cost of panels, batteries, charge controllers, and other equipment that may have to come with it, and maybe cost of service, the service to install it, comes it between 3 million and 4.5 million, thereabout, depending on the brands you're using and the number of batteries that you want to use and all that. Okay. And this installation can actually cover up to 60% of the home's electricity needs. Okay, say, especially if you stay in a place where there's constant sunlight. So you can say, okay, when I wake up in the morning from 7 a.m., I want to be on solar till about 6 in the evening or 7 in the evening, and then I can change to back to the national grid. So that can cover about 40 to 60% of the electricity needs. Okay. Now, solar panels, also note that solar panels have an approximate lifespan of 25 years. Other equipment may need changing, more regularly than that. But at least solar panels are quite, they have quite a long lifespan. So that means that you'll be saving almost 2 million on what you would have spent you'll be saving almost 50% of what you would have spent on electricity by using solar panels. Okay, so you have an estimated. So that means that for your cost of construction, you can have an estimated payback period of 2 years. Like I said, I need to emphasize the fact that none of these figures are accurate. They are just to give us a perspective of how using solar powered energies can actually help you to save costs. And I also put here, I said, note that there are other costs of maintaining the system. This is the change of batteries depending on the intensity of use. So at the end of the day, it may initially look like you're spending a lot on installation, because I think that's one thing that pushes people away from solar powered systems. You are looking at the cost of installation and thinking, where am I supposed to get this money? How am I supposed to do this? But in the long run, you are actually saving, because after that installation, you are saving on what you would have spent on electricity normally. Okay, sometimes they tell you the national grid is down. At least during the day while there is sun, you are having electricity. It means it's reducing the amount that you may need to spend on fuel, to power the electricity in your home at that time. And the beautiful thing is, the more popular the solar systems are becoming, the cheaper not exactly cheaper, but the different different plans are now being put into place to to help you to acquire them more easily. So for instance, I know I've heard of a bank that actually gives a loan for installing solar systems that you can pay installmentally. And I think even some of the companies that sell these things actually also have those programs. So it's becoming easier. It's almost like, when telecommunications came into Nigeria initially, how expensive it was. But the more popular it became, of course, the easier it became to acquire these equipment. So that's the same thing that is happening with the solar systems. So that is one way of saving costs through electricity. Now, there's also cost saving through water efficiency. So like I said before, water efficiency simply means that, and let me mention, I always mention this every time I get the chance to talk, that in a place like Nigeria, we don't take water efficiency very seriously, especially because uh, the public supply of water is not a common service in Nigeria. In most places, in most homes, most offices, everybody's generating their own water by themselves. There are boreholes everywhere, there are wells everywhere. People that don't have access to that have a way of buying water. And so because, you just open your tap and water flows out, people do not understand that water is actually a limited resource. Water is actually a limited resource. So every time you open your tap and water comes out, you are taking from, there's only one So let's look at fresh water all over the world as a tank. There's only one tank of fresh water. When you open your tap here in Lagos and water comes out, you are reducing the amount of water in that tank. When someone in Norway opens his tap and water comes out, he's reducing the amount of water in that same one tank. So what I'm trying to say is that fresh water can actually be depleted completely. It is possible for fresh water to finish. I know we say yes, the earth is 70% water, but the truth of the matter is that 70% water is actually seas and oceans, which are not fresh water. The percentage of that 70% that is fresh water is about 1% or so. So globally, there's a lot of clamor for water efficiency. Let's manage the way we use water. Don't waste water, and all that. And that's why we talk about water efficiency. So, because we don't see, you are not you are usually not paying bills for water here. People do not take water efficiency very seriously. But the truth of the matter is that if you build a house in a way that helps you to manage the use of water, it also helps you to it reduces your costs of operating that house. So even if you have your borehole or your well or whatever it is, wherever it is that you're getting money from, remember that you will still need electricity to pump water from the source into the reservoirs, into the tanks. Okay. So at the end of the day, the use of water, the excessive use of water will also still lead to extra costs. All right. So it's important that we understand that water efficiency also helps us to save costs, whether directly or indirectly. So I've said here, I said the use of water efficient appliances, like low flow faucets, low flow shower heads. So shou- these are shower heads that, sometimes when you enter especially if you use a water heater, you first leave the water to run for a few minutes because you want the warm water to come out before you start taking your bath, right? But if you use low flow shower heads, what it does is that it reduces the amount of water that comes out per time, and by increasing the pressure. So the pressure, it feels like you still have a large amount of water running, but actually it's a lower amount of water that is coming out. And then the use of dual flush toilets also reduces total amount of water used in the building. Dual flush toilets are those ones that have two buttons on top. A lot of people don't know that the smaller buttons is for urine. When you press the small button, less water comes out when you urinate, because you don't need the same amount of water for excreta and urine. So you can use a smaller amount of water when you do number one, and a bigger amount of water when you do number two. Then there are other things like rainwater harvesting, especially in a place like Nigeria when the rain is a lot, you can create a system that stores rainwater, so that for things like car washing and for watering plants, you are not using fresh water. Okay. Then, I said according to the OECD, the demand for fresh water is estimated to increase by 55% by 2050. And that is just logical. If we're saying that population is increasing, definitely the demand for water will increase. So there's a need for us to become more conscious of the way we use water. I said, while more people in Nigeria generate their water themselves, water efficiency reduces the need to pump water. Okay, I've already talked about that before. So water efficiency, and I need you to remember that at the beginning of this presentation, I had said three of the major things that's the three of the major features that make a building green are electricity efficiency, energy efficiency, water efficiency, and then the materials. What kind of materials the type of materials that I use. So water efficiency helps you to save cost directly or indirectly. And I think that it also boils down to the fact that a lot of us just, especially when you live in a house, sometimes you spend on the house without keeping accounts of how much you're spending and how you're spending. I think if we actually consciously take account of the spending we do, we will understand that these things can actually reduce our cost, reduce our spending. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is, once again, a reminder, the topic is the economics of green building. in Nigeria. So economically, why should I choose green buildings? So the next thing we're looking at here is higher capital and rental values and increased occupancy rates. Okay, so when we say higher capital and rental values, we're saying that research and studies have shown in other parts of the world, especially, that green buildings are actually getting higher values than conventional buildings. Okay. In terms of, and when we say values, we are talking about both capital values and rental values. I think I mentioned it in my last presentation here that in a place like London, and I think I put the data is here, I'll get to it. In a place like London, the demand for green buildings is getting higher, even though they are they have higher rental values. So people prefer to take those properties with higher rents. Why? Because they can see that at the end of the day, they're going to be saving on things like electricity and water. So even though the landlords are putting them are increasing the rents, people still are willing to pay that premium. Okay. And then another thing about the UK is they also have they already have a target. I think that by 2030, all their buildings are supposed to be green. Okay. So it's the earlier the better for people that live in them and people that buy them. Then green certified properties often sell at a 5 to 10% premium compared to conventional buildings. So even the capital value, apart from rental value, when you want to sell, you'll be selling more than someone that is selling a conventional property, which makes sense. And then occupants are showing more interest in green buildings because of lower operational costs. Yes, so I mentioned that before. So yeah, so this is the data I was talking about. Green premiums across global markets. So premium simply means that the extra amount of money that you are paying over the normal cost of something. Okay. So for instance, if a loaf of bread is going for 2,000 naira everywhere, but you rather buy a loaf of bread that is going for 2,500 naira. Why? Because you found out that when you take two slices of this 2,500 naira bread, you are full compared to the 4 or 5 slices that you usually take for the 2,000 naira one. So why don't you just pay extra, to buy this one rather than that one? That's what the premium is. So the premium, the premium in the case of the property means the extra added value that people are willing to pay for properties, for green buildings in comparison to conventional buildings that are not green. So we see that in North America, we have an average rental premium for green certified class A office stock is 7.1%. And that's in places like the US and in Canada. In London, it's 11.6%. So people would pay, people are willing to pay an extra of almost 12% above the usual rental value for green buildings. And then in Asia, it's going for about 10%. So you can see that it's an investment that makes sense. And even though it may sound, because you see, one of the problems we have in this part of the world is lack of data. So people, when you go to people to say green buildings, it's just it's a natural, it's a natural phenomenon. When you're presenting something new to people, they just believe that it's definitely expensive. And yes, it may be expensive because it is not very common. But the truth of the matter is that we don't even have the data to prove that, okay, it is expensive or it is not expensive. So these people can present this data that they have, these statistics that they have, because they have the data, to collate this statistics, but we don't have it yet. So also, you will be future proofing your investments and this is for investors and estate surveyors and valuers. I say estate surveyors and valuers because investors would come to us for feasibility and viability appraisals when they want to go into an investment. So it's important that estate surveyors and valuers also understand what future proofing of these property investments means. So as global trends shift towards sustainability, and I'm sure that in a week you would hear about sustainability in one way or the other. not less than 3 or 4 times. It's either somebody's talking about money, sustainability in sports, sustainability. So in the built environment too, we cannot wade away the fact that we must talk about sustainability. So as a global trends shift towards sustainability, green buildings are becoming the standard, not the exception. I just mentioned that UK has a target of 2030 to make sure that all their buildings are green. And that's just UK. There are a couple of other countries too. If we if we read, if we go into research, you find a lot of other countries to have set all sorts of targets about green buildings. Some have said all their public buildings will be green. Some have said, some of them are doing it in phases. So whether we like it or not, green buildings will become the standard in Nigeria as well, not an exception. So the earlier you invest into it, the better. Environmental regulations, both globally and locally, are likely to get stricter, as is already seen in more developed countries. And this may call for a lot of retrofitting. Retrofitting simply means that you take a property that is a conventional property and then you turn it into a green property. Okay, so it means that you have to do some redesigning and some replacement of some things, just to make it a green property. At the end of the day, retrofitting becomes more expensive than actually constructing a green building from the onset. So it makes sense that if you're going into new constructions now, construct them as green rather than thinking of, okay, when need arises, I can retrofit. No, that's usually more expensive. And then ESG is fast becoming a criterion for corporate responsibility, making green buildings a major asset for showing conformity. So if you're following the news, you will see that even in Nigeria here, a lot of companies are coming up with their certified buildings, using them even as a marketing tool. Sterling Bank is a typical example with what they did with their head office. So whether we like it or not, at the end of the day, all of us will be moving towards these green buildings. So it's better, now to start tending towards it. Then green buildings are seen as lower risk and higher return investments because, of course, of the features that we have spoken about earlier. And governments and organizations often offer tax breaks, grants, or subsidies for green building projects, reducing upfront costs and improving return on investment. I know that recently, like some days ago, I saw a flyer of a bank that wants to do a webinar. I think it's tomorrow, about how to access green funds. Okay. So it means that where it would have been difficult for me to walk into a bank to say I need money for to build a house. If I can present my project as a green building, maybe it will be easier for me to get funding. So I think it's important that we also start exploring all these different options, whether as estates of yours or whether as investors or even as just property occupiers. So what are my recommendations? My recommendations are that estate surveyors and valuers should encourage the inclusion of green buildings into property investment portfolios. I had mentioned before that investors usually come to estate surveyors and valuers for feasibility and viability appraisal, to consult for investment and all that. So I think that estate surveyors and valuers are able to promote green buildings, okay? But the reason, like I said, the reason we're looking at the economic aspect of it is that not everybody is interested in the environment. No matter how much you talk about the environment is killing people, some people will just look at you and say, look, it's not my business. But when you come from the angle of, okay, finance, this is how much you can save, this is how much you can make, it may become more interesting. So estate surveyors and valuers have a role to play in this. One of the factors stifling the growth of green building markets in Nigeria is paucity of data, and I've said that before. So estate surveyors can aid the growth of the markets by being more transparent about transactions and property operations costs. So we also need data. We need data to grow this market. We need to know the real cost of property, the real cost of operation of property. What are we saving by including some of these features into those properties, and so on and so forth. Then investors need to be aware of the various financial and non-financial incentives attached to investing in green buildings and explore them. Like I mentioned, some banks are offering funding for green projects. We need to know, can real estate investors also be part of this funding? Can we also enjoy this funding? Yeah. Then tenants and property occupiers should be more conscious of property features and how they affect the health of occupants and the operation cost of the building. I think we've talked about that a lot before. If I know how much I'm saving by by staying in a particular place, it will help me to make the right decisions. Or if I know how much I'm spending, why I'm spending extra. I mean, if you as a tenant, if you rent a property in a place where you find out that they only have electricity once a week and you have to be buying fuel, of course you start looking for how to leave that property. So the same thing is, if I live in a property where I'm spending half of what I used to spend where I'm coming from, of course I'll be happy to stay there. Even when they increase the rent, I may not mind paying it. So yeah, these are my recommendations for this. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I'm here to take questions.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Teni. That was thank you so very much. Listening to you, especially, I just had a lot going through my head. I mean, I've had a few things written down here. Thank you very much, and thank you for especially discussing the economic side of this green building. Before one or two talking points that I listed here, I also want to remind listeners, people who have joined, if you have any questions, please, you can signify by raising up of your hand. I mean, raise your hand on the group, and I mean, someone is going to promote you, and we're going to ask you to ask your question. And if you want to drop your questions directly, you can actually do so, so that we've got a few minutes so that we can take a few questions and then wrap up quickly. Dr. Teni, whilst you're speaking, I was thinking in my head, or probably just asking. I note down, I was writing, I wrote something about the issue of commercial scale level. I wrote something about industrial scale level. How do I mean? Um, the discussion tilted towards maybe not necessarily residential. Maybe as individuals, we're looking at and saying, okay, how do I make sure that where I'm staying, what I have is there's cost efficiency, or I can manage my cost and all that. Have you, what is going to be the side, or what are the green building experts looking at in terms of the commercial scale of this aspect? Because let me take, for example, let me be practical. You are in let's not even look at commercial, let me look at the industrial scale, for example. Let's say industrial, you have a company that deals with equipment, large scale using of machineries and all of those stuffs and all that. And these guys either use electricity, or they use diesel power engines and all that. What are the green? Do you see green building experts? Do you see us dovetailing into this angle, the industrial? And I also wanted to also talk about the commercial aspect, because if I look at it, I can pick this from the dimension of, okay, lower scale, small scale, individual, one or two residential properties. But you're talking about a building that has, for example, that has maybe we're not there in this part of the world, but you have building that in the building, commercial residential building, that houses as much as 100 residents, 80 residents, 80 occupiers and all that. Is this still possible? Is this still possible? You are mute. Can you unmute yourself, Dr.
Okay.
Teni, please?
Yes, I've unmuted myself. So uh, yes, so it's very possible. Let's also have in mind that compared to like other fields, this field of sustainability in real estate is still quite nascent. That means it's in its early stages. So research is ongoing. Okay, but um, it is very possible, because one of the features that make a building green is design. Okay, and I usually say that a lot of times when people hear green buildings, I think they mistake it for smart buildings. Okay, so you're
Mm,
expecting that it's a building that has a lot of gadgets, that automatically stops water and automatically turns off light. So yes, some of those gadgets actually make a building green. But a lot of times, we also need to be careful because those gadgets may also require electricity. Okay, may require electricity, which may be adding to the electricity needs of the building. But do you know that it's possible to have a certified green building that does not have any um any exotic gadgets? Okay, and all that makes it a green building is just the design. So the design may be, what is the orientation of the building? Is the main facade of the building facing a part, it's not facing the sun, so the building doesn't heat up as much as a building that is will be facing the sun directly. So that means that the cooling that you need for that building is reduced. Okay, so it's not necessarily the gadgets that you use that make it green. Yes, you may need some gadgets, but sometimes it's basically the design. So in terms of industrial properties, like you have mentioned, it may not be possible to say, okay, we'll make this property net zero. But then again, earlier in my presentation, I talked about secularity, secular economy. So what happens is that even though the building itself is still emitting carbon, the company finds a way to find the deficit of that carbon from somewhere. So sometimes maybe they are doing something else somewhere that is reducing carbon, and then they take credit for that carbon reduction into the building. So the building is emitting carbon, but they're reducing carbon somewhere else. Okay, so that's, you hear things about carbon trading and all that. That is where it comes into play. So yes, this building I have built is still emitting some carbon, but my company is doing something that is reducing carbon somewhere else, and then we are reducing the credits. We are taking the credits for that. So that, like, in the commercial scale, yes, it is possible. I mean, a building like the Sterling Bank head office is a big building now, and
mm,
that building is green. It's certified green. Okay, so there are gadgets that can be put into place, there are methods, there are techniques that can be put into place, and then the design also helps. So it's possible, maybe not easy, especially in a place like Nigeria where we're just, getting into it. But if we do our research in places like Asia, in some places in Europe, there are actually buildings that are net zero. So it is possible.
mm. All right, thank you, Doctor. Another thing is going to be you were saying something about in one of your recommendations, you talked about how estate valuers, surveyors and valuers should encourage the inclusion of green buildings into property investment portfolios. Let's even look at the energy side of it, and the energy side that you actually explained earlier on. I'm thinking, would you think, or do you think there's a need for there's a knowledge gap, deficit gap that needed to be bridged in such a way that when you are, how do you estimate, for example, if you have a solar, if you're advising your clients to say, okay, fine, let's go solar, right? This is a residential, a commercial building, let's just go solar. Let's not do well, maybe as a way of contributing to to the environment, not to, which is the sustainability we're talking about. How do you, in terms of factoring the bills, the calculations, one of the, you mentioned also in your presentation, you talked about the solar panel, for example, that lasts maybe, for example, one of the components that can start as much as 25 years. There are other components that will require maybe some changes here and there. But how do we, in terms of estimation, in terms of calculation, do you really think as surveyors we are capable to handle so that your investment don't just go down the drain? Because if you're advising somebody to go solar today, how do you do the calculations and the estimation?
So, as essence of values and valuers, we are not experts in that field. Of course, we need to get consultants. There are consultants that that's what they specialize in. Okay, so definitely, our profession. We're a profession that usually uses a lot of other professionals. So definitely, it's not up to us. In fact, it is not safe that we try to estimate. Okay, it's better you get professionals, because apart from the requirements of that property, there are also factors that also have to be taken into consideration. There are factors, including what are the equipment that you are using and all that. So it's not up to us as estate surveyors and valuers to estimate, okay, this is, like I said, it's better when you're planning for green building, it's better when you start from the design stage. And all this
Mm.
comes into the design. If at the design stage you're already saying, okay, I want 60% of my electricity to be solar powered, it means that must be in the design stage. So it's not up to us as estate surveyors and valuers.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So at the background, I can see that Faith is raising her hand. Please, can you promote her to the panel? I will come to her later. Me Faith, Simoha, but I mean, please, at the background, please can you help me promote. So we'll bring her up at the appropriate time. I mean, just like two more talking question and points, then we now go to the questions. So please, at the back end, please can you help me promote? I can see that someone is raising his or her hand. Let me check again. Yes, yes, I think Faith is the name. Yes, I can see only Faith for now. Please, you can help me bring him or her up. Okay, so Dr. Teni, this particular about this, you also said earlier on. In fact, when you asked that question, I was one of those who said what my answer basically was, because I mean, I will go for an electric car because I don't have to buy fuel. That's it basically for me, because it has to, I'm not thinking about the environment immediately. I'm looking at my pocket. I know how much these days, you'll be surprised. Even the mere, I mean, I was telling somebody jokingly the other day, there was this experiment that somebody said I don't want to mention the name of the service station now, that was some service station, you put in their fuel. I mean, it lasts you, I mean, I had to queue for two, I mean, I don't know who did that to me. I mean, I don't know who did that to me because I had to queue for like 2 hours. I got back and I was just angry at myself that who did this to me. And I think that I don't know, maybe it's I don't know, maybe it had any impact on my car or my fuel, but I was just wondering in my head. I had to go queue when I can go into a filling station and buy fuel without going through any stress. But because of just that. So I said this because of the question you asked, and talking about this energy, we have to talk about this energy thing. You said something, the data you reeled out. You talked about that 4.8% of households have access to solar. And meanwhile, we can do as much as 50%, right? So what do you think is wrong? Or what do you think? How do we get this threshold a lot more higher than what we do have? And secondly, then what then happens? What then happens to the mainstream electricity if everybody moves to solar? What then happens to this other side? I mean, this is just asking this, you know?
So, okay. So let me start from your last question. Let's be realistic. It's not possible that everybody will move to solar. Let's be very realistic. It is not possible. Okay. So, and as it is today, I don't think the national grid is supplying 50% of the energy we need. Sorry, I may be wrong about that. I don't know. But that's my feeling. So the truth of the matter is that the solar is simply it's just going to balance it out. I don't think it's going to take over. Okay.
Mm.
It's just going to balance it out. The reason people are not moving to solar if it is so advantageous, number one is costs. And that's why we're talking about the economics. Number one is costs. It is not cheap, to be honest. It's a lump sum, you know, and because it is privately owned, it's not like there's a government program, or how it is. Everybody that is doing it now is doing it to make profit. Okay, so it is not cheap. I mentioned earlier though that some organizations, I think including banks, are actually putting some programs together, for instrumental payments to get the solar system and all that. I don't know how effective that is yet, but maybe we will get to that point where it will become easier. Maybe even workplaces, would have programs like that for their staff. But it is not cheap. It is not
Mm.
cheap. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doctor. So let's listen to, okay, Faith, can you unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and I mean, let's hear you make your comment or your contribution. Faith, I can see you have been promoted. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, and thank you, Doctor, for your wonderful presentation. I came in pretty late because I was in another meeting, but my name is Faith Asian, and I work for Jat and Associates. So one of the things I've been pondering as an individual is why is it that why is it? So we know that there are lots of housing deficits in Nigeria. So why? And then most of the time is because of the spend cost to building. So I'm asking myself, why is it that we can't, in today's development, can't we think about more affordable way to build, right? I'll give an instance. Take for instance our septic tanks. Today, you have what you call bioseptic tanks, wherein you use that to convert the waste and use it to, you don't have to dig a bigger space to have your soccer or your septic tank. So I'm just thinking that, Doctor, why is it that we in Nigeria can't look for more affordable ways, more sustainable ways to build? You mentioned Sterling Bank. And if you see today, most of the houses you see today, why are we not incorporating, flat roofs or roofs that can take in, solar panels? Just basically, why is it that from the design point to the execution point, to the end point, why is it that in Nigeria we are not embracing it? And what can we do better to embrace it? Maybe if that happens, then the cost of building will be less expensive, and then our commission will be lesser. Would that be an issue? Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma.
Thank you, Faith, for your question. Thank you so much. And you are so right. I mentioned before, I said it's like the issue of telecommunications in Nigeria. When they first came, it was for the rich and mighty, because of the prices of even a SIM card, and then after buying the SIM card, the cost of making the call. But as more people started to acquire it, the prices started to drop. So first of all, there's the issue of awareness. Okay, and that's why we are grateful to organizations like Ubosiele and Co that puts this together, to help people to know, that there are other options. The truth of the matter is a lot of people, it is what they have known from the onset that they stick to. So no matter how rich they get, they just keep on, this is what I've been doing, I've been making profit from it, just continue in that way. Some people don't even want to hear about anything new. So there's a very low level of awareness. To be honest, there is a very low level of awareness, and for people that are aware, for some people that are aware, the level of knowledge they have is low. Okay, I've spoken today about solar, but I've also said that you can have a green building that does not have any equipment on it. Okay, so do you know you can have a house that is a green building that doesn't necessarily have solar panels on it, but has been designed in a way that it minimizes its use of electricity. So the level of awareness is one issue. Another problem is our level of technology. So you have said, why don't we use methods that reduce the cost? There was actually there's an estate in Badagry, that was built. I think it's called Peridot Estate. I hope I'm not mistaken now. It was built a couple of years ago. All the buildings were green. The level of the technology used was so good that it reduced the cost of construction significantly, because I think they were able to put up, it would take, with the type of technology they use, I think they were able to put up a 2-bedroom bungalow, a block of 4 2-bedroom bungalows. I hope I'm not mistaken, something like that, in 2 weeks. Okay. So they were expatriates, they came, but
Doctor, was that the one?
unfortunately,
Was that the one that we visited some years ago?
yes. But unfortunately, that estate did not do well because of the location. Okay. We all know how the road to Badagry is. Okay. So it didn't do well. And I think the company, I think they eventually sold it to Lagos State. Like, I didn't follow up with what happened like that. So the level of technology that we have is also a bit low. And then we shouldn't forget the fact that we are an import-centric country. Almost every material that we use for construction is imported. So once you are importing building material, it is very difficult to control the cost of construction. Do you understand? So until we start looking at, and that is another feature of green buildings, locally sourced materials. So until we start looking inwards and generating technology to use our own locally sourced materials, the cost of construction will rise, will be high. It doesn't mean that there aren't buildings in Nigeria that are built with locally sourced materials. Or they're clay brick buildings, but we just need the material we need the technology, to be able to keep improving on what we have. So one of the major things that makes our property costs rise is the fact that a lot of our materials are imported. So we need to look within.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Fitz. Thank you for that angle and that dimension. So let's take a few other questions we have in here, and then we'll wrap it up. Someone is asking, I think I have other 3 questions here. Let me take the first question from, yes, we have Biodun Adeboye. He says there are issues around safety concerns, especially around fire with solar panels and batteries. What is your take on this? Also, are there regulatory concerns we should consider?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Biodun. So let me remind you again, I'm an estate surveyor and valuer. I'm not an electrician. I'm not an engineer. I'm an estate surveyor and valuer. And like I said, I've heard of those issues in fact, it's not that I've heard, I've experienced firsthand one of those issues with fire with panels. And we found out that the problem was connection. There was a wrong connection somewhere. So it still boils down to the fact that technically we need people that are trained. A lot of people dabbling into solar installations now, they're just doing trial and error. Oh, okay, it's a new market. Oh yeah, let's do it. Do you understand? So we need people that are technically trained and sound. Okay. A lot of it has to do with wrong connection. Probably the capacity of the panels is too high for the batteries. Yeah, and yes, there has to be some kind of regulatory control. There has to be some kind of regulatory control, even though one fear is that once the regulations come into it now, there may be some added costs, but there really does need to be some form of regulatory control. So like I said, I'm an estate surveyor, not an engineer. That question may be better for the engineers.
Anyway, thank you, Doctor. That you answered appropriately. The truth, my own thinking would be that for whatever new technology and all that, you always have the stage wherein there always be complaints and here and there. But as time goes on, you begin to. I'm glad you mentioned that. You talked about firsthand, and the real issues were that of wrong connections. So it means that if we do that properly, then there may not be too much of concerns, getting the right people to do that. Yes, that was the right, we should be worried, but again, I think getting the right technical persons to do these things will actually help. Let's take the other questions. I think the other, okay, this one is saying, okay, Bamidele is saying, what a nice presentation from Dr. Teni. He says, I want to ask, what is the level of awareness and education among stakeholders of built environment? That's his first question. The second question is there a functional infrastructural facilities, example, adequate water supply system to support the green building technologies? Did you get that, Doctor?
Yeah, I got it. So I think for the first question, I've already answered that before. There's a low level of awareness, but it's building. Okay. So with bodies like the Green Building Council of Nigeria, with the regular seminars to educate people about the various aspects of green buildings and all that. So the level is low. Of course, my own research too has shown that there's a low level, but it is building. We are not where we want to be, but we are not where we used to be. Okay. So with time, we will grow. Then you said, is there a functional infrastructural facility to support green building technologies? I'm not sure I understand that question, but like I mentioned, there are different things that make up it. It's not as if you will go to the market and say, I want to build a green building, give me the factors or give me the equipment. There are different things that can make, at the end of the day, green building is, what does this building produce? Not necessarily what did I put into the building. Do you understand this? What does it produce? What does it do? Okay. So there are different things. While we've been talking about solar, I've also mentioned that you can actually build a green building without solar panels. Okay. I always say that our huts, the huts that are built with mud in the village, they are green buildings because they have minimal to no negative effect on the environment. So they are green buildings. So it's not what you put into the building that necessarily makes it green. It's what's the effect of that building on the environment. That's what makes it green.
Okay. This other question from this end talks about what are the requirements to join the Green Building Association in Nigeria. Also, can we join? This has been asked by Obayemi Yusuf.
Yes. So just you just go to Google and search Green Building Council of Nigeria. It opens the website, then you see all the requirements there. Yeah. So just go to Green Building Council of Nigeria.
Okay, so let's see. There's another. We had some good questions. Okay, people are thinking, saying, okay, what's a nice presentation, Dr. Teni. Okay, we've answered this question. We've answered the question of awareness. I think you mentioned that. Okay, so Muri Anima Shawu is saying, in time past, I've always thought green buildings were buildings that has trees around it. Up to now, I'm here to know the total. So my question is, in simple terms, what makes up a green building? I mean, I think you mentioned about, can you just quickly, the thought is that maybe it's just green building. And Doctor,
Okay.
that brings me
So
back to
sorry,
what you said
I didn't
earlier.
hear the first part. You said in times
You
past you
said,
thought that a green building is what?
there are buildings that has trees around it. Trees, all these trees.
Okay.
That makes me to remember what you just said when you started the presentation. You talked about your experience in the Lagos State when you are making a research, and somebody,
Yeah.
that got me almost off my.
Yeah. Okay. So while not all buildings that have trees around it are green buildings, trees around buildings actually is one of the factors that can make a building green. Okay. As a matter of fact, it is even in the physical planning in Lagos. If you go through it is one of the requirements now that you should have some green some vegetation around the house. So a green building, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is a building that has minimal to no effect on the natural environment. Okay. In the construction of a building, there's a lot of things that we do that affect the environment, from the exploration of the resources that are used. Okay, let's look at cement. It's almost impossible to build a house now without cement, right? And then how is cement gotten? First of all, there's limestone is being extracted. In the extraction of limestone, we are destroying the environment in one way or the other. It's transported to the factory. In the factory, it is being processed. Every time you pass Eweko Road, there's thick smoke coming out of one very big chimney. Do you understand? All that is going into the atmosphere. You transport the finished product to the site. When you get to the site, they are cutting the trees that are there. All the animals that were living there are being displaced, So in one way or the other, we are destroying the environment. So a green building is a building that has been built in such a way that these negative effects on the environment are totally reduced. Okay, so is it that you have found a way to use, like we said, locally sourced materials? Like, okay, for instance, we talked about the use of clay. It's that may be one way that you have decided to say, okay, you know what, I want to reduce my use of cement, and I'm going to be using mud bricks, so on and so forth. Or have you built it in such a way that it has enough windows such that it doesn't get so hot, so you're not always thinking of cooling it and putting on the AC, and when they take off the lights, you have to put on the generator because the AC has to be on, otherwise nobody will be able to stay in the room. But you have constructed it in such a way that you can actually leave your windows open and people will be comfortable in the house. So any building that you have built in such a way that you have taken the environment into consideration, and minimally reduce to the minimum the effect it has on the environment in terms of energy, in terms of water use, and so on, is a green building. So having trees around the building also helps in that, first of all, vegetation help us to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, right? Because they take in the carbon and they let out oxygen. So it means that any house that has oxygen around them has a better indoor environmental quality. Okay. Also, it may act as a shade against sun. So maybe sun that was supposed to be hitting the house directly is first absorbed by these trees, making the house cool, and therefore the house has less need for cooling. So yes, trees around the house may make it kind of green, but that's not the total definition of a green building.
What a response. Thank you so much, Dr. Teni. We'll take the last this last question is an anonymous attendee is saying, as an estate surveyor and valuer, he's saying, is a green building valuable? I think you've answered that earlier on in your presentation. He's now saying, if yes, what are the methods and approach that can be used in carry out the valuation of green building? Dr.
Okay,
Teni.
so that question is not a question that can be answered here. That is a whole that's a whole difference. So it's not a question that can be answered here, but is it valuable? Yes, I answered that before, and I even said that in data from other countries is showing that it's even more valuable. They are more valuable than conventional buildings. So, but for the valuation, no, that's not a question that can be answered here.
Wow, what a wonderful presentation. I'm sure for all the listeners of this webinar, we can go on and on with Dr. Teddy. And I'm so proud to, like I said earlier on in the introduction, I know Dr. Teddy very well. And she's very passionate about this. When I say passionate, very passionate about this. And so I just even remember now when you were mentioning that building, the Badagry stuff. I just remember that we did the visitation so many years ago. And I remember seeing that. Whatever happened to those structures? Well, like you said, we still have a lot to do in this part of the world. But thank you so much, Dr. Teni, for doing this with us. I'm sure you know this is not the last time. We'll still come back. Because we only looked at this, we've actually looked at the dimension of energy. I imagine if we go deeply into the water angle, that's another dimension entirely. But by and large, thank you for the presentation. And for everyone who have joined, I want to say a big thank you to you for joining us on this webinar. I believe it's been a wonderful time you all enjoyed from the responses. I believe a lot of people had actually enjoyed the presentation. Mr. Faith, thank you for your contribution. All the persons who asked questions, we appreciate your questions, and we thank you so very much. And we hope that you do this with us again in the month of March, when we'll come up with another topic that will be very interesting and very exciting for us to meet. Dr. Teddy is someone you can, I email for those who want to reach her personally. You can always reach out at Bosele and Co. if you have any question. But Dr. Teddy email's address is tenigbade@gmail.com. Just in case you probably want to, you need some sort of questions, you want to engage, ask her a few more questions. She's accessible. Our email address is tenigbade@gmail.com. or you can reach us at Ubosele & Co. Like I said, she's a proud, she is an alumnus of Ubosele & Co. So anytime we can drag her, she's part of us here in Ubosele & Co. So our email again, once again, is tenigbade@gmail.com. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have a question or whatever it is that you want. The slides are going to be made available to us. Just send in your email address. I'm sure at the back end, they're going to send the slide to us. We can go over and over. Then if you have any other things, you can reach out to us. Once again, thank you so very much. It's been a wonderful time, and it's an honor to host us this afternoon at this webinar. Looking forward to see you in the month of March when we're going to be having a wonderful topic to deal with again. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. At this junction, this webinar is brought to a close. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.